Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our sixth session already. We only have two more after today, so it's really kind of flown by, but appreciate everyone being here every step of the way. We have another good session planned for you guys tonight. As always, this is GoToWebinar. Your microphones and cameras are turned off. You do have the ability to communicate with us through the Ask a Question dialog box. So just type your question into the box. It will be moderated, and then we'll be asking questions periodically throughout the presentation. There's also a question and answer session after the presentation that you'll have opportunities as well. For those of you that have been following along, sessions 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all posted online. They were part of two different emails over the last 2 weeks, just letting you know once they're available with the links to the YouTube videos. I will be putting together a cumulative email when all is said and done with all 8 in a centralized spot. This is, like I said, our sixth session. Chuck Morning and Paul Antonson are our speakers tonight. We're going to be talking about penalty enforcement and crew communication. We do have a session, or an Officiating 101 session intended for our newer officials. That'll be taking place next Tuesday. Myself and Jordan Stewart will be leading that session. For those of you that plan on attending that, who are L2 or lower, please check your email inbox. I did send out an email today soliciting questions from you guys of topics you might want covered during our presentation. And our final session will be led by Mike Carr of the NFL. We're trying to do something unique with Mike's session. Rather than box him in with one topic to present on, we're trying to make this an open forum for him. So if you guys have questions, feel free to send them to the swoafb@gmail.com email address, and we'll start putting together a list of questions for Mike to answer during this presentation. I'll also send out a follow-up email outside of this presentation asking for questions as well. Okay, throughout the past few weeks, we've had several presenters who have worked Division III or higher football, and we keep referencing the MFOA, and I've had some people ask me what the MFOA is. How do you end up, if you have aspirations to work at the Division III level, how do you necessarily go about that? So this screen's just intended to give you some more information. The MFOA stands for the Midwest Football Officiating Alliance. It's a combination of those 4 conferences that you see on the top of the screen. The majority of the teams are in Wisconsin and Illinois. We do have a few teams in Iowa and 1 team in Minnesota. There's a current staff of about 175 officials, of which the majority of them are split between Wisconsin and Illinois officials. But you can probably estimate anywhere from 75 to 85 officials in the state of Wisconsin. There is an application process. Tom Fiedler oversees the Wisconsin schools in the MFOA, and I believe the application's on the WEAC homepage. But before you even do any of that, it's good to just connect the dots. If you have any questions or want to be introduced to Tom, we'd be happy to do that for you, as well as any of the officials in your area that work that league. They can help you as well. Tom does, and it's usually annually, Tom does put together a spring clinic for aspiring officials who might want to work college football at some time. This past spring was canceled due to COVID-19, but it's typically in the March, April, sometimes May time period, and we've had it in Madison, we've had it in Milwaukee, and if I'm not mistaken, they might have had one in Stevens Point or Eau Claire in the recent years too. But that's generally how it goes. So if you're interested, express your interest to an official you know who probably works in the league, and they'd be happy to help you with the introduction to Tom. Speaking of officials who work their way up through the WEAC conference, our guest speaker tonight, friend of SWOA, is Chuck Morning. Chuck is from Menominee, Wisconsin. He's currently a field judge in the Missouri Valley Conference. Chuck was awarded some postseason games. He worked the FCS playoffs this past year. He worked a second round game and a quarterfinal game. And Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe those games were at Montana State and Weber State. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Chuck worked high school long before his Division III career started. He was working high school, started in 1996. He worked up until 2014. He's had a couple state championships during his run there. Also interesting fact, Chuck is a very accomplished Division I women's basketball official. He's worked postseason assignments at the Division I level as well as the Division II and Division III levels too. His co-host tonight is Paul Antonson of SWOA. Paul has been officiating high school football for the past 21 years. He's worked in the states of California, Illinois, and Wisconsin. He's also worked 1 year at the Division III level too. Paul is currently the SWOA's football membership lead instructor. What Paul does is he organizes a meeting with a team of fellow officials, and they produce content and everything else for a weekly or bi-weekly meeting that we have throughout the football season. And I think that's it. Paul and Chuck, are you guys ready? I'll sign the screen over to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chuck, you have the screen.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Dave, for the opportunity to speak with everybody this evening. On behalf of Paul and myself, I'm looking forward to this. This will be my 6th or 7th talk I've given between high school officials, and I actually had to do one for the Missouri Valley Conference, our Deep 3 for the Division I level. I was asked the night before, so you have to adjust on the fly when you have nothing to do besides webinars and everything like that. So I was lucky enough to do that as well. What we'll do this evening, we'll talk about crew communication first, and then we will go right into penalty enforcement. At the end of the penalty enforcement that Paul will talk about, we will get into some video, anywhere from 1 to 8 plays, possibly, depending on our time. We'll try to keep this at right on time, and I hope you enjoy this information that we give you, and we will get started. Jared, my volume is good with me and everything?
Yes, I can hear you fine and see your screen well too.
Perfect, thank you. All right, gang, crew communication. Let's talk about definition. As you can see, we have a field judge. That is not me. Talking to Paul Crisp, that used to be at Pitt, now is at Wisconsin. Communication definition, a process in which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, and behavior. So if you think about when you were a kid, we had that game, I can't remember what it was called, where everybody would get in a line and the teacher would give the first student a great big sentence, and then it would go all the way through to everybody else to the final person. And then that final person would come up with a great big saying, and it'd be like, that wasn't even close to what the teacher had. So communication is very important for us as officials to make sure we have all the information correct before we move forward, whether it's verbal or nonverbal communication. Why do we communicate? We try to share information with our crew like I talked about, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, for penalty enforcement. We have issues with players. The coach has a question about a non-call or call that you may have had on the far side of the field. So that goes a long way with communication with coaches. Next, we have the gain the trust within your crew. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So we had a play 2 years ago with the crew. I got put on late in the year, or late notice in July before the season started, and didn't know anybody on the crew, kind of feeling everybody out. And as a deep wing, we had a pass play down the field. It was South Dakota at Indiana State, and a pass play down the field, and I'm on the opposite side of the field, and I have nothing going on in my area. So I kind of extend a little bit. My teammates or crewmates have a pass interference, absolutely no brainer. Everybody in the stand saw it. And so we have a pass interference call. And then I look down at the line of scrimmage and we have a penalty flag on the field also. So I'm like, holy cow. So I have no information at this point, right? And my short wing on that same side of the field doesn't have any information. The coaches from South Dakota want to know what's going on, and we're trying to get information as soon as possible. So we're communicating back and forth with my short wing to the coaches from South Dakota. And 5 officials come together and talk about the situation. Now, at this point, I'm walking my way out onto the field between the numbers and the hashes. And I can hear this conversation going on. We have a defensive pass interference on down the field, and we have an illegal forward pass. So if you think about it now, put it in your brain at this point, what I just said, can you have defensive pass interference with a illegal forward pass? The answer is no. So what happened in that conversation was the officials decided they were going to offset the penalties and replay the down. From 20 yards away, as I heard this conversation. I said, got on my 020 and told my crew, I said, no, you cannot do that. Defensive pass interference cannot happen because we had an illegal forward pass. So the only foul that we have is an illegal forward pass. And with that crew, we had stickers throughout the year for, good mechanics or whatever, a good call, or whatever the case may be. Well, we went into halftime. I got so many high fives because I saved the crew from making a huge mistake. So that made my trust from that point forward, the rest of the season, go a long ways. So that's my story towards learning trust within your crew, which goes into reassurance of that enforcement is going to be correct. You see the picture down at the bottom of the screen there. You see everybody communicating back and forth. We got one gentleman pointing, this is probably the spot of the foul. The other guys are listening to make sure we're going to do the enforcement properly, and so on and so forth. And you'll see in our video clips that I'll have tonight some really good communication between officials. And then also the next down the line here we have to socialize. Obviously, we can do it prior to the game, on your way to the game, if you're traveling together as a crew in high school, or you can do it after the game. But when it's game time, it is game time. We need to be focused on our job, our crew's job, and be able to communicate with the players, coaches, and even the people in the stands, if we had that ability with the microphone from the referee. And as the bottom saying goes, the list could go on and on. With whom do we communicate? Top left-hand part of your screen, your crew, on and off the field. Talk about on the field. You can talk about penalty enforcement. You can talk about timeouts that are available. The coach wants to know what is going on the other side of the field, and maybe even to the players. Talk to your team captains about, hey, got to help me out with 56. He's crossing the line a little bit. We don't want to flag him, but if we have to, we will. So examples of that. So off the field, you're talking about communicating with the schools. As you can see on the right-hand side, game time, verified game time, locker room, where we're going to be for locker rooms. Do we have towels? Where am I going to meet game management? Where are we going to go for halftime? Now, back up in northern Wisconsin, where I'm at, we have some schools that will bring you pretty much everything but the kitchen sink to halftime. So, for instance, one school had a roast beef sandwich, a Snickers bar, a bottle of water, and a Gatorade. Well, there is no way you are going to inhale all that in halftime and be able to talk with your crew to make adjustments if you need to. So you thank them. Yes. Can you take it to the locker room or even a bag of popcorn? They will bring it to your locker room or, as you're walking off the field. So that's just an example for me. Game day personnel, we're talking about bald people. It could be little Joey that's in 5th grade. Or it could be Bob that's 60 years old and he's been doing it for 40 years. That's been a part of the school. You got clock operators that think they know everything. But let me tell you, you need to talk to them if you can. To be, obviously with the 40-second and 25-second play clock, you might have situations where you might have to make an adjustment on the fly if you don't have that microphone as the referee to communicate with the people up in the booth. Or if, for what I've done it a couple times when I was a referee, is gone right to the head coach. Coach, I need you to communicate to your coaches upstairs to get to the clock operator to get his stuff together. He needs to be more. He needs to concentrate more. We need better flow. So with that being said, you talk about game mic and the O2Os, and I'm not sure everybody uses the game mic as a referee, and I'm not sure everybody uses the O2Os, but these are great tools to use in big situations. We'll have a couple plays where the mic was used and it was awesome, absolutely awesome. Everybody knew what was going on. The O2Os, being able to communicate from one side of the field to the other side of the field, what's going on, from the back judge to the referee. Hey, we got a hot clock. We got to crank the clock. Forgot to start the clock. Get it cranking. Get it cranking. So we stay on, keep a good flow to the game. To the coaches and players, like I talked about before, get to the captains. Hey, we got a problem with 56. Coach, we've talked to 56. Can you talk to him about, he's crossing the line a little bit. He's maybe hitting after the whistle a little bit, but we're not going to try to flag him unless it's so blatant that everybody in the stands sees it. And God forbid if we don't have football this year and you cannot have people in the stands. That would be just really hard for me as a parent, because my son is going to be in high school this year, possibly on the varsity. So I might get an opportunity to see him play, but I don't know. I'd love to see it, but hopefully I can see the crews work and be able to hear their communication and so on and so forth. And again, list could go on and on. Paul, anything that I'm missing so far?
No, I think nice job summarizing it. You're looking at these lists, and I know we'll hit on this coming up too, but the key here too is this communication is not a, hey, we've showed up to the school, let's get this going. There's communication that happens the entire week leading up to the game, especially when we talk schools, game day personnel. If you're showing up and finding out that, it's going to be a extended halftime or that they've got special things going on, that might be, it's going to throw things off for you and your crew. And all of a sudden now you're thinking about things that are part of the game, but not directly related to the game, but it can, mess with you. So the more information you get the earlier on, the better you're going to be when you show up to the school and can start to focus on the game at hand.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. That was a great comment. Extension of halftime, high school, you got parents' night, you've got homecoming, you've got Joey's birthday, you got Fred's birthday. Obviously the list could go on and on. Anyway, let's get back to the communication process. Effective ways to communicate. Obviously, everybody knows we have verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal, you got to use your tools that you have in your box. How do you communicate to the coaches? How do you communicate with your crewmates? Nonverbal, how do you communicate with your with the coaches? Do you give them a thumbs up? Hey, coach, or do you give them the stop sign? The basketball stop sign. Coach, that's enough. I've heard you. You've been heard. We need to move on. If you're not going to move on, it's going to cost you 15 yards. Let's just take care of business. Obviously, you don't want to come into the game with if you had issues with the coach in previous years or previous game, you want to be approachable. Hey, let those things be bygones. It happened. We moved on. Be approachable at all times if you can. Biggest thing I've learned as a Division I official, you need to listen attentively first. Make sure that you understand what the coach is asking. You need to understand what the player is asking before you answer, because you don't want to interrupt the coach before he's done talking. Not professional. You want to be honest and open to all parties. Again, like I just talked about, players and coaches. You be honest, coach. You know what? I absolutely just missed that call. I had this year it was probably about 40 degrees, and it was raining the entire game, raining the entire warm-ups. It started right before warm-ups when we took the field, and it stopped right after the game was over. So it rained the entire time. I was in 2 sets of gear, and I was freezing. Second half came out. I missed an absolutely bad horse collar right in front of me. Why I didn't throw, I have no idea. No idea. Coach was like, Chuck, what'd you see? I said, what, the missed horse collar I should have called? I was absolutely honest with him. He's like, okay, I'm good with that. He's like, shouldn't have missed it. I said, you're right. I shouldn't have missed it. So that being said, it is what it is, and you move on. When you're talking to the coach, as you see in Coach Belichick down here, I would not want to try to talk to that man, because he's been around the block so much that he could tell if you're lying or if you're not having the right rule reference. That guy, I think he could be an excellent poker player. He's got, you want to have good eye contact. Be careful with your body language. You don't want to cross your arms. You got your head turned to the side. You're looking at the coach, be like, really? This is what we're talking about? Give good body language. You have your hands, in front of you or behind you, and be respectful. Respond as soon as you can. So there's certain situations, during the game as short wings. I should just say line of scrimmage, because you don't have deep wings. Line of scrimmage people. Make sure that you're able to officiate the play and not get interrupted by the coach. Say, hey, coach, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Coach, I hear you. Let me get to a dead ball situation or timeout, and I'll get back to you with the ruling that I had or the ruling across the field. I could find out for you from the referee. If we don't have O2Os, we get it crossed to the umpire, referee, and to the other side of the field. Paul, anything you want to add to that clip?
I think just the only thing that great call out there, Chuck, regarding, the working with coaches that, I think especially in the high school level, a lot of us, you see the same teams, the same coaches year after year. And, I think over time, you kind of start to develop a preconceived notion, well, this coach, he's going to, always be asking for holding, or this guy is always complaining about, but you can't let that, especially with your way of communication, let the, past behavior dictate how you're going to officiate that night's game. A lot of times coaches don't remember what maybe was a blown call or something. Some of them do, but it's also important that, I find, a lot of times people bring things up from past games in there and start to stir the pot a little bit, but it's really just listen to what the coaches have. You're officiating that game that night. Use that good body language. If you're working with a coach, maybe you've had a run-in the past, which I said, listening to him with your arms crossed and already rolling your eyes and thinking, yeah, here we go again. It's just going to set the tone for what's going to be a challenge night for everybody. But if you come in there with a good attitude, you're listening, hear what they have to say, they're gonna respect you a lot more, and hopefully it's going to make things go smoother for yourself as whether it be a referee, a line, umpire, anyone on the crew.
Absolutely, Paul. Yeah, that's a great point. And Jared brought up the MFOA, and if you want to continue up the ladder, you have to do these things because those will set you apart from somebody else. If you're not approachable, you won't last very long in college football. The coaches are going to write you up, and then you're gonna get a hold. They're gonna get a hold of Tom or whoever your supervisor is, and you'll probably get one check mark, and if you get the next one, it's probably the pink slip, and you need to find something else to do. Maybe just stay with high school or whatever the case may be. So let's continue to move forward here. Oh, hang on one second. I think that was right. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
So off the field, obviously, with COVID-19, we have a unique situation for if we just have the ability to work this year. And I've been asked, since I don't have any college games this fall, if we do play, obviously some of the older officials are going to step down. I might just throw some gear on and become a high school official for a couple weeks, maybe. So with that being said, they talked about some possible gear that you might need, depending on what the whistle situation is, if we're going to have to wear masks. I would strongly recommend bring your own water bottle so you don't have to worry about the team trying to take care of it for you if you need one. As far as uniform, communicate with your crew, whether you're going to wear short sleeves, long sleeves, obviously depending on weather and so on and so forth. Obviously, your preseason with your crew. At this point, as a crew, you should be well on your way to getting ready for the season, because it's going to start soon, or at least we hope it starts soon. Whether it's make sure you got the correct uniform. If you do use the O2Os, make sure you have they're up to snuff. They have batteries and so on and so forth. Obviously you have the WIAA test. It's funny, I was at my daughter's appointment this afternoon, and I actually pulled out the high school test, the 100-question test. I went through it. I don't know how I did. Not sure. Just kind of guessed on a few of them because I'm not 100% sure on the new rules yet. I did this afternoon and watch the WIA video. So those are tools that you have, and I would strongly recommend, if you do not have access to, or if you're not a Nassau member, I would strongly recommend that you become one, because Referee Magazine puts out a great product with great situations, articles in the magazine that you can read. There's a few quizzes in there, I believe, that you can take. So there's many things out there that you can, if you have access to prior year's videos to go through as a crew. And the list could go on. Talk about game schedule on the official center for the coaches and for Wade Lebecki, for you to get one. You want to have it on there because you want to get so evaluated by the coaches. Whether or not they do it or not, that's here nor there. I've had many coaches do, when I used to do high school, many coaches used to do them. Then there was a few that must hate me or hated our crew because they didn't do it. But I will give you an example with Wade at the WIAA. It was getting close to playoff time, and he wanted to go out and watch certain crews work. Well, he called me up one day. He's like, "Hey, Chuck, October 12th," and I don't remember the date. October 12th, you're supposed to be at, you have it down on the official center that you're supposed to be at School A. And Fred's crew is already at School A, according to there. So there was a mix-up on my part with the conference commissioner. He switched us on games. So we both had the same game down and the same teams playing at School A, which my crew should have been at School B with two different teams. So, and he wanted to watch the one crew work, because we just worked the state tournament for him in 2014, and so he wanted to watch somebody else work, and he was just like, "Come on now, we need to get things organized." So you need to be, as a crew chief or whoever does the official schedule on the website for Wade and for the coaches. Make sure that you have your stuff up to date with coaches, Wade, and for the conference commissioner. Just double check. Next topic, the next thing down is the crew changes to games. Obviously, with COVID-19, some of the older officials may not work. I know a handful of officials up here that are not going to work. That's why I was asked, would you work if we had games? I said, as long as I'm not working college now, absolutely. I'll help out if possible. Again, we talked about it early in the conversation about contacting the schools. It's so important in case something happens. Did the game get switched to a Thursday night, or did it get switched to a Saturday afternoon from Friday night? In Menominee here, we have access to UW Stout. Did it get moved to Stout, for example, or is it still at the high school? So little things like that. As far as travel plans, my crew, when I was associated, I had a travel coordinator. He would set up where we would meet as a crew, if possible, and drive together and have our pregame on the road. Or would we drive separately and then get there a little bit earlier at a game, maybe an hour and a half earlier, and have a quick pregame, talk about a few things, or whatever the case may be. But he also coordinated time, and this is what we did up in northern Wisconsin here, and it might be different for everybody else, but example, we would, as the crew after the game, is find somewhere on the way home where we could eat as a crew, stop and have pizza or get some snacks or something like that, just to break up the monotony of driving home. I will tell you this right now, social media is an absolute disaster. If you can be on, I'm on it, Facebook, all the time. I don't post anything inappropriate, anything like that to get myself in trouble. I'm on basketball web groups. I'm on football groups, whether it's high school and college. That's all good stuff. I'm always willing to learn and pick up a few things from other officials, whatever it may be. But do not, especially if you decide you want to go up the ladder, post something on social media that's going to get you in major trouble, or you're going to be questioned about, hey, on August 12th, 2020, you posted something that was inappropriate, and now you're getting called on the carpet about it. I have a friend of mine that got himself in a little bit of trouble. He is now not officiating anymore because of that. So just be aware of that. And obviously, there's many other things we could talk about off the field. Paul, anything to add to the list that you can think of?
No, Kurt, I think you covered it all there.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. We talked about a little bit of communication with coaches. Be professional. We got high intensity games. All the way from the state championships, and then you can work level 1 might be a blowout, or you get into the regular season and you got conference rivals that absolutely just hate each other. It's going to be I can't say that because I don't know if there's any females on, so I better not say that word. It could be a buster of a game, and you need to convey the calm and relaxed demeanor of a very good official. That'll set you apart. That's one of those things that I talked about. It'll set you apart from everybody else. Can you handle that situation? Can you talk that coach off the cliff before you have to give him 15 yards? We had a situation last year in Western Illinois, and we had an absolute disaster with our TV personnel on the field. She did not know what she was doing. And the Montana State coach that we had, was not conference game, thank goodness, was just fit to be tied. He's like, Chuck, this is ruining the flow of the game. And this is the first 5 minutes of the game, and he is on me. So I had to talk him off the ledge. I said, Coach, if she doesn't get any better, we're going to replace her. Well, thank God, because this is just terrible. So that's just one of those things you got to talk them off the cliff a little bit. You know, obviously they may not like a call that your crewmate may have had 14 plays ago. You got to be able to talk them off the ledge. It's time to move on, Coach. I talked about good eye contact. So imperative to have good eye contact with coaches. You got your head down, they've already got you. Face to face. No, not nose to nose, face to face, see their eyes, be honest. And I can't stress this enough. Know your rules. This past 4 months, working with Zoom calls with our crew in Division I and working with the Deep 3 officials and working with the line of scrimmage officials that we've done over the past 4 months, I've picked up on so many little things that I did not know about the rules. And it has made me a better official. It'll make me better for the future and be able to, hey, Coach, that was a targeting foul, and this is the reason why. You have to know your rules. If you don't, make sure somebody on the crew does, because you don't want to give the coach false information because, okay, now that crew just went from a 6 rating to a 3 rating because Chuck doesn't know what he's talking about. And everybody on here, or most of the people, at least the veterans, know those coaches where they know the rules, or at least they think they know the rules. Then you have coaches that have no idea about the rules. They don't know what low block is. They don't understand. Well, that's not catchable in high school. When I used to work in high school, Chuck, that's not catchable. Yep, you're right. It's not catchable, but it's still a foul in high school. On Saturdays and Sundays, we might have a different discussion. So it's just stuff like that. Respond to questions and not reactions or statements. If you just had a pass interference call against the coach and his team's on defense, and he did not like it, his assistants don't like it, he comes flying down the sideline and just giving you the business as a short wing. Or he's pointing out at your back judge because he should have made the call, or come talk to you about, that should have been offensive pass interference. Try to talk him off the ledge if you can. Like we talked about. Be professional. You have to stay calm. Be in a relaxed demeanor. Be honest what you had. Use your rules knowledge. He may or may not like it, but that's where you need to be as an official at this point. And if they respond properly, we move on. If they don't, Coach, we need to move on. And if you don't, it's 15 yards. It's just another flag. It's 15 yards. With that being said, sideline officials, wing officials, you have a tough job. No doubt about it. In high school, I worked a little bit of short wings, and I absolutely did not like it when I first started. But as I got better with the rules in high school, I got more comfortable. And I started out as a umpire in high school. I went to back judge for a little bit. I was a short wing for a little while. Then I worked my way to a referee. And every time, not to toot my own horn or my crew's own horn, but when we took the field, the coaches knew, oh hell, the morning crew's here. We're not getting away with anything tonight. And that's the way your crew should take. If you want to take the next step and work level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, or even at state championships in the future, that's the demeanor that you need to have towards coaches, and that's the demeanor they'll have towards you. and and the rest is pretty much history. But you need to continue to work on the little things that will set you apart from other crews. On the field, anything? I'm sorry, Paul. Anything to add at that point?
Yeah, I would say, with knowing the rules, and we'll get on that, everyone on the crew should know the rules. It's everyone's responsibility. That being said, there's always times when, there might be something I'm questioning myself with a rule or thinking I got that or did, that's where the crew communication, don't be afraid to reach out, or if you're another official, reach out and say, to Chuck's other point, say, hey, that's not a foul, or that wasn't, I think that's where communication, you can really save each other. Most crews usually have one member at least that is really knows the rules probably better than anybody in the stadium. Make sure you know who that is on your crew. If not, someone needs to become that person and really use them too. Not that they should be the one that has to know everything. Like I said, everyone should be there. But if you're, there's nothing worse than, interpreting a rule or saying that, yeah, that's the rule, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and then you come to find out later that you're completely wrong. It just really can hurt the credibility of yourself, your crew, just a lot of things there. So you want to get it right. And, sometimes it's swallow a humble pie and getting it right, but don't just, don't be making up rules on the field either. So
awesome.
That's it.
Hey, Paul, Chuck, we have a question from the group. Could you give some advice on rule study?
Oh, wow. Awesome. Honestly, my thought process, and this is how I did it, is I went from probably backwards compared to most people. I went from the case book to the rule book. So I read, I don't have my new rule books and case book yet for high school. But I would go backwards, and I would read the play, put it in the rule, and use the rule as best I could. If I had a question, I'd write it down and then try to read it again and then move on. And then after I was done with rule 1 or rule 9, if I had any issues, I'd go back and try it again and use a different situation. There's also other outlets out there. I believe, I don't know if Reading still does it or not for high school. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I know he does for college. Reading's book for high school, that has more simplified with the rules. Talk to other officials. How do you learn the rule book? I wouldn't just do it yourself. It's better to do it as in pairs or in groups, as small groups, not big like 10 or 12. I would say smaller groups if you can. You can break it down a little bit better. Does that help, Greg? Jared, is that kind of what everybody's asking?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Paul, anything you want me? I'll just go forward and we'll make this short and sweet, and then you can take over.
Yep.
So
Sure.
I have one more question for you guys as well, if possible.
sure.
All right, this question came in for one of our 101 questions, but it probably applies to this conversation even better. Dylan Espin from West Bend has the question. His question's in regards to wings. And Chuck, you've worked sidelines with Bo Pelini in your ear. Paul, you've worked 20 years on a sideline as well. How do you guys manage the situation where you just had a tough call on the field, where it was a foul or not a foul, and the coach who didn't benefit from that play is just in your ear and they won't let up? They're getting to the point where they're very agitated. They might be yelling at you. How do you work them through that situation? And if you can't work them through that situation, how do you bring yourself to make a decision about an unsportsmanlike conduct foul or just moving on without one?
Oh, that's a great question. You said it was from Dylan, correct?
From Dylan, yep.
Dylan, that was awesome. 101. That's big time. And you talked about, Jared, you brought up Mr. Coach Pelini. That guy, and I know Greg and a few others have had to deal with him as well. I actually had a situation with him last year, and I had to talk him off the ledge as best I could. He was fit to be tied with my referee. He's like, Chuck, he screwed us last year, and he's trying to do it again. I said, Coach, what happened last year is last year. What happens today, you and I can talk about. I'll discuss with whoever made the call, get their interpretation, and I will get back to you. And if he's chewing on my backside, and 2 years ago with Coach Pelini, we had and I got tore up by the Big Ten office on our weekly playlist by Bill that I should have flagged Coach Pelini for 15 yards for being on the field. Instead, I took the initiative of running over towards him, getting back into the coach's box, and talking him through the play, why we had a certain situation versus why the whistle didn't blow. So any information as far as talking rules knowledge or helping why a certain situation happened the way it did, why there was no whistle on a goal line play, because the short wings have to find the football. Until you can find the football, you can't rule on anything. And then all of a sudden the ball was in the end zone. Well, now we have a touchdown. And Coach, there's a great big pileup, and he could not understand that, why there wasn't a rule sooner. He, as a deep wing, told me I should have blew my whistle from 30 yards away because I was in the corner of the end zone. Coach, that's not going to happen. So I think that answers the question. Paul, anything you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think, from my standpoint, a lot of the things over the years, just with working with the coaches, it's a lot of just, what we talked about, listening to them. Sometimes they're talking, I find that they're talking loud at us just to maybe get their team fired up. If they're frustrated, it has nothing even to do with us. They just, had to find some way to vent, and we seem to be there. Obviously there's there's a certain level of venting that you can take. And I think the stop hand or the, okay, Coach, I've heard you, that's enough. But let's move on. Let's get going. Are some of the, quick things that, you acknowledge. You're not there to debate them. You're not there to get in a long discussion. I will say, as a side official or wing official, the one thing I will sometimes have a little bit of a shorter fuse on is when the assistant coaches start to think they can also give us time. At that point, usually my comment is a very friendly but loud comment to the coach that says, "Hey, Coach, I'm more than happy to talk to you, but I need you to filter the questions from your staff. I'm not going to have conversations with all of them." And usually everyone kind of gets it then, and we move on. There's some days where it's just not their day, not your day, and it does come to where you have to throw maybe a sideline warning or give them a 15-yard. I mean, I think I've done that a handful of times over my career, and and it's never a tough. But usually at that point, it's maybe that's just where it's gone. But usually a lot of times it's just listening, acknowledging, and saying, "Okay, got it. Yep, we'll be looking for that. Yes, I understand what you're saying," and then we move on. And and like I said, usually a lot of times they just need to speak their piece, and then they're good too. So,
absolutely awesome.
Yep.
Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
I'll finish up with on the field real quick. We talked about O2Os. If you have them, great. If you don't have them, you still work the old school way. Whistle usage on if you have a penalty, a couple cracks of the whistle, get everybody's attention so the chains don't move, because God knows that everybody in high school, they get excited when the ball goes down the field, and all of a sudden you got a flag on the other side of the field and chains move, this and that, and it gets ugly. Nonverbal communication, you can possibly use the false start signal. Everybody knows that he moved. Don't need to run over and say, "Hey, 65, Paul, full start." Everybody saw him move. Just get a preliminary signal. Let's roll. Status of the clock, wind the clock, or you got crossed arms. So with the stop clock, and so on. We talked about rules knowledge. I can't stress enough. Scrimmage kicks with PSK and layered play. What I'm talking about, layered plays, when you have a foul on one team, then you have a foul on another team, then you possibly have a dead ball foul. Make sure you understand the enforcement of all those plays. Obviously, coaches, positive and negative discussion or feedback. And I do have a picture of a little bit of an O2O. It's a little old school for me, but that's all right. Other than that, I don't have anything, but I'm going to say a couple words with successful people are great communicators. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this sport, and it's long enough for me. It's 40 minutes of me talking. I don't like to hear myself talk, but when it gets to be football time or basketball, I love talking. You can't quote silence. There's a time and a place where you can use this. Use it if you need to. Handle your sideline. And I will tell you this one last thing, and I picked this up from a Big Ten guy. He said 70% of the communication that you have, whether it's off the field or on the field, is nonverbal. Think about that. 70% of the communication is nonverbal. I thank you for your time with my side of it. I'm going to hand it over to Paul. You ready, Paul?
Yes. Yeah. So
No.
obviously with communication, one of the biggest areas where we as a crew are communicating is when it comes to penalty enforcement. It's penalties on the flags on the field. That's, all eyes divert to us as officials. It's our responsibility to get the penalty, get it enforced correctly. There's, a lot of it can have significant impact to the game, but it's a really important time to go through that communication. So what I want to cover today, and this is, obviously just kind of scratches the surface. We could spend, 2 hours talking about penalty enforcement and still not have enough time. But hopefully these are some things that as you take back to your crew and some discussions that you're going to want to kind of think about and talk about as you look to be penalty enforcement. So we're going to go through some basic things that everyone will be included in. We'll talk a little bit about roles from each position, just some reminders, and then I kind of want to call out a few, some of the judgment calls when it comes to penalties that you can think about. So next slide. This first one here is really just kind of, I call it the basics, but you're going to hear kind of an underlying theme as we go through this, is that, everybody's got a role when it comes to penalty enforcement, whether it be calling the penalty, reporting the penalty, measuring off distance. There's no one that gets to take when their flag's down, a lot of times the clock stops, people think, okay, things going. That's when we need to really step up and start to, really be focused on what's going ahead. There's a lot that can, go wrong with penalty enforcement. And if you're not a good crew that's handling them efficiently and effectively, it really can lead to other issues down the line. So, some things that we have here, I just call out here is, make sure you see the penalty. You don't guess. We've all, I've seen a lot of times where, out of the corner of my eye, some player goes flying by, and it looks like, well, maybe they got hit in the back or, someone, did something. But if you don't see it, you can't just start guessing. And a lot of times too, take a minute. If you see something and you're like, that doesn't look right, think through quickly, give yourself an extra second, throw the flag. It's better to have a late flag than an early flag. I feel, where you're just, yep, we saw that. Think about, point of attack. We talk about, a lot of times, a lot of penalties can be avoided. A lot of crews, we're not there to throw penalties. Obviously, if we see them, we want to report it. But, there's nothing can take away the momentum or the excitement of a game than a whole bunch of stoppages for penalties. So knowing point of attack, and I think to counter that, is what could be maybe a talk to as well. 76 has been holding all night. Let them know, hey, get your hands in where they need to be. Don't be hugging these guys or whatever the case is. So really kind of know through that, and then know your rules. I know we talked a little bit about it before. I put, rule 2 is kind of the standard that you'll always hear. It's got all the definitions. It really helps kind of lead that conversation as you get into penalties. So, I don't think the rule book is something you open on page 1 and you read it to page whatever it is, 160, like a book. You kind of have to bounce around. But rule 2 is one of those where you'll always kind of consistently go back and kind of take a look at it. Flag on the ground, keep officiating. I've had several. I knew some a couple of years ago where kid threw quarterback threw the ball. He was 2 yards past the line of scrimmage when he threw it. obviously, okay, got a legal forward pass, flag goes down. Next thing I look up, well, the kid that caught it was wearing number 67. Like, oh, now I got another, I got a whole bunch of stuff going on here. So, or do I not? There's kind of things you got to keep looking at. There's weird stuff that can happen. You hear a lot of times, there's the late hit out of bounds. So, don't give up once you've got that flag. That doesn't mean that the play is over. But know that is it a flag? Is it a live ball? Are we a dead ball? Does it even matter? Where's your clock status? You're down in distance. There's all these kinds of things. And like I said, it's not just the person throwing the flag, it's everyone. If you see a flag on the ground, as maybe the opposite wing, back judge, umpire, referee, be looking to see, is that clock still running, or do we need to get that stopped? There's a lot that can go in there. If you do throw the flag, take a moment, get your facts together. Foul, what did you have? Do you need to provide additional details? A lot of times you'll hear, with holding, coaches are going to want to know, well, what was it? Did they, grab them? Was it there's this, I think you'll see in some presentations, they'll talk about 6 different types, the jerk and restrict, the carry down, things like that. You may want to kind of help reinforce that. Some fouls, obviously, like a false start, you don't need to get in there and get too excited. Everyone saw it. They know what it is. Obviously, offense, defense, some crews like to talk, is the white jersey, dark jersey, number of player, it's good to have that. It helps with that. Some officials, they get a little caught up, and I think that's where they sometimes forget about keeping officiating. They're so focused on getting that number. We as a crew tell the coaches, sometimes we just get the color of the jersey, we don't get the number. It's tough to see in certain situations who it's on, but obviously you want to try to get that so you can get that over to the coaches so they can kind of help out with that. Anything to add there, Chuck?
One thing I'll give you guys, everybody on here, it's the make it be there. MIBT. Make it be there. So everybody sees it, including when the coaches watch the tape. Make it be there. Great stuff, Paul.
All right. Yep. So next, let's go. Oh, is there a question?
No, that was me.
No. Okay. All right. Next is just kind of want to go through some of the rules. So let's say there is a penalty. Now it's time to enforce that. As a referee, the big thing is, most referees, they're going to want all the facts. And that, if you don't understand, don't have someone come run in and say, holding 72, blah, 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 there's a, and then they run away. And if you don't have, because you're the one that's going to be ultimately on front and center stage with that. If you don't have all the answers you want, if you're like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean? Was it holding 676? Was it defensive holding, offensive holding? What did they do? You got another flag on the ground. Make sure that as a referee, you take the time. I mean, the clock is stopped. Let's get the facts. Let's make sure we understand what you're going to be calling. And then give a prelim signal if need be. Now, some fouls, obviously, you don't, need to offside false start. You're probably just going to go with it. But make sure you give that prelim signal and then go get your answer. I put here, this year, the new rule for 2020 is there's that designated individual. It doesn't have to, it's not going to always be a player. It could be the head coach. It could be someone else, the head coach. But make sure that you're working with your wing officials if need be to make, or whomever it is that you need to make sure you get, if they want to accept that or decline that. Once you've got that, know your signals. Be crisp and clean. I find, a lot of officials, you'll see sometimes they're standing in with the scrum of all the players and people bump into them. Otherwise, especially in the high school where you don't always have, you're not mic'd up, there's not the chance that you want to be as visible or verbal as you can be. And so you want to make sure people are able to kind of see you and can kind of know what the penalty is. There's not a lot of second guessing. I know a lot of referees that practice their signals in front of mirrors or in front of their family or whomever they'll watch, but really making sure that that's a good opportunity. You have to be visible. That's how you're communicating with not only the coaches and players, but even the fans and press box and everyone else. If you are mic'd up, it's always good to have another official nearby, just to make sure, kind of help reiterate, or if there's something that you misstated or it's said, so that you can make sure you correct that. And then make sure that, once everything's ready to go, make sure the crew, your other officials, the teams are ready before you get signaled in. There may still be a coach having a conversation with one of your wing officials, just getting some clarification. So, you know, we want to be efficient. We want to get back to action, but, you know, also you don't want to be rushing things where everyone's not ready and set and something else weird could happen. Anything there, Chuck? Or
I'll just piggyback just a little bit about the make sure as a referee that your crew is ready to go. We had a couple instances in our season last year, not necessarily our crew, but just as the group, where we had some of our officials that were not in position. They were in the middle of the field, and all of a sudden there's a play coming at them, or the referee cranks it, and they snap the ball because they're going fast. And we got two officials that aren't even at their pre-snap position. Houston, we have a problem. Somebody's going to get hurt. Kill the play. Let's reset. So good stuff, Paul. I'll move forward for you.
Yep. All right. So moving into the umpire position, you know, I think the umpire, you know, whereas the officials need to know the signals, umpires, you really need to know the distances. I mean, you're the one that's usually marching off penalties, you know, the 5, 10, 15. As a best practice, you know, listen in for the foul, hear what it is, if you're not the one calling it. And while they're, you know, once the decision, while the referee's making that final signal, you should be walking off the penalty and getting ready to place the ball. You know, in the best cases, as soon as everything's set, you've got the ball ready to go. I say that also as a best practice as you're walking off. I find that officially, you know, some officials like to count every single yard. If it's a 15 yard, you know, do some basic math, go from the 30 to the 45. You don't need to walk off 15 yards. It just kind of can look sometimes a little clunky. But also need to know the position of the ball and the where it, you know, was it a, you know, long pass interference, the ball was originally at the left hash, now it's at the right, or does it need to go back to the left? Knowing where the ball is, knowing how to mark that off. And then, you know, before you place the ball on the ground, you know, it's always good maybe to get a confirmation. We'll talk about how the linesman can maybe help you with that. I think, you know, a lot of crews, it's maybe a 2-person just to make sure that, you know, there's that double check. And then obviously as you're putting it down, making sure you have step away before you move into your pre-snap mechanics. And that kind of comes back, you know, eyeing up the referee, making, you know, doing kind of another check to make sure all your fellow officials are set, everyone's ready to go. And then you can set it down. And, you know, especially with the 25, 40 second clocks in high school now, you know, they're not always listening for whistles.
Okay. Sorry, Paul, I accidentally hit the button.
No, that's fine. That's all right.
Here we go.
All right. Yeah, back judge. So, you know, back judge is always, this is really, I think penalty enforcements are a great opportunity. I know as when I worked in games as back judge, this is a really, you kind of become kind of the overseer of everything. Obviously, if it's not your call, if it's like a holding or something that's not out, you put the flag down. One of the big things is I always would go over, help out if it's one of the line guys calling the foul, hold that dead ball spot. If needed, you know, making sure that doesn't get moved, especially until the decision. It's a good chance maybe to get another ball, especially if we're looking to switch out balls. It's a wet night. Usually on our crew, we ask the back judge kind of records the penalty, the player, the time, kind of log that down. Either it helps with, you know, post game, we can kind of talk through that. Also, as you're doing video review, they can kind of help with, you know, hey, let's go to, you know, 2:02 left in the fourth quarter and see that face mask call that we maybe that we called and made sure that it was there. You're responsible down distance, the clock status, you know, usually, you know, sometimes you don't, but a lot of times back judges are looking right at the clock. So making sure that the clock was stopped, or if we need to get it started again, help to pick up flag, you know, just kind of making it, kind of helping with that cleanup. And then the big thing here, I'd say at the end is, you know, your dead ball officiating. You know, a lot of times too, the back judge, you're standing there, maybe the referee and the line guy is talking, the headline is moving the chains, umpire spotting the ball, and, you know, something weird could be happening. So, you know, it's definitely not a time to just kind of sit back there and say, okay, let the other 4 guys on the crew do their thing. I'm just going to, you know, think about where we're going afterwards. No, this is a time where you definitely have to be ready for kind of the unexpected to occur.
Awesome.
Finally, it's in there. Sorry, Chuck.
Yeah, you ready for the next one? Sorry.
Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, I'll get to the video here.
Awesome.
The line judge, linesman. Obviously, a lot of the flags you'll have, there's things that you'll want to be talking through. I find, as on our crew, a lot of times the rule of thumb is we have our linesman, the line judge, line G, hold the original spot. What was where are we starting from to march off the penalty? The headline will kind of walk off the yardage and the chain crew. And then that kind of helps with us looking to see, as like I said, the umpire's lining up with them. If we've got a 10-yard penalty, the umpire's standing 7 yards down, the headline standing, 10 yards. Well, who's right? We can look back, see where the line judge is. Oh yeah, it was 10 yards, and kind of just helps kind of triangulate and get that clean enforcement of that penalty. Obviously, line judges and linesmen, you communicating the foul to the sidelines. You're talking to the designated representative, assist the referee with, what did they accept it or are they declining it? There's also obviously, what was the foul on, especially the defending team wants to know who was it on, what did they do? We talked about the use of those. That's one of the great opportunities to use that, but don't always rely on that too. I mean, especially when calling fouls, you should be, run in, let the referee know what you have. Obviously, if sometimes there's easy ones, but if there's things that you want to talk through with them, especially when we get to some of the unique penalty enforcement, definitely makes that's probably not a conversation that you want to have over a radio. You want to have that face to face, and then also just kind of help with getting a ball in from the sidelines, helping with getting flags. If you got a long flag down the field, getting that back once the decision's been made, and then help with officiating before moving in your pre-snap. Next slide is just some reminders. Like I said, everyone participates when there's a foul. There's a job for everyone. If you find that there's a flag and you're like, well, I really didn't have anything to do, you're probably missing out on something, because there's definitely something that you could be doing on every time there's a penalty. We want to move quickly and efficiently, but we want to take our time. Like I said, the clock is stopped, so it's not like time's running out, late in the fourth quarter, there's a holding, no one's losing out. But, we want to take our time, but we also want to be efficient. We don't want to be sitting there, figuring out, okay, let's try to get a new ball and let's try to, what's going on here? Do you want to accept this offside penalty or not? Yeah, they want to accept it. There's things that you have to do to be efficient. We want to communicate, but, we don't want to over communicate either. We don't need to, if there's like I said, I go back, false start, you don't need to run in and have all these conversations unless maybe, one of you thinks it's an offside, one thinks it's a false start. But a lot of times it's pretty easy to know which did what. You don't need to have a long discussion, and, but obviously you want to make sure you're communicating so that you get it right. And if you start seeing that there's someone they're not calling it right, get in there and make sure you correct it. Everyone on the crew is responsible for getting it right. So if you're in the locker room later and you say, hey, by the way, Jim, you really blew it, and you called a pass interference, but it was also an ineligible pass on field. That was, well, you know what? We all blew that then, because you didn't step in and correct me when we were supposed to. Everyone on the crew is responsible. Don't miss the big ones. Make it be there. Get the big ones. And you need to officiate fouls can occur in the first 10 seconds and the last 10 seconds. And, obviously, especially when it comes to some of the safety fouls, the last 10 seconds can be, whether it's a 1-point game or a 30-point game, you got to be ready to officiate. You can't just, say, okay, I'm tucking my flag away for the night. We're not going to call anything. Obviously, there could be some things that maybe you can be a little more lenient on as some of the second, third stringers come in. But you know what? I've seen some pretty nasty things happen in the end of a game of a blowout when some kid's trying to use that as his time to shine for whomever it is up in the stands. And and those are the ones that kind of come out of nowhere, and you have to be ready for that. The last slide that I have here, just as a kind of some unique ones that I think you really want to kind of think about and where communication really becomes important. There's probably other ones, but I think these are the 4 that I've seen over some years. Pass interference. That's make sure line judge headline, back judge, make sure that you both maybe saw that or confirm, hey, in some cases, I mean, obviously there's two guys wide out there. The guy's not even looking at the ball, tackles them. Yeah. But sometimes, you might want to take a look. Maybe you saw that the offensive pass interference, the guy pushed off. Well, maybe there wasn't maybe you saw something different. So definitely making sure at the end it's a judgment call. If that's what you saw, that's what you confirmed with, then you go with it. Intentional grounding is another one. Two people should be involved. Who are those two people? Referee and whomever else is on there. I've had referees that will say, the quarterback throws the ball, downfield, and it looks like it didn't go to anybody, so he'll throw intentional grounding because it was wide open. Well, the back judge saw that the player that was supposed to run that route got tripped, or ran, instead of running in, they ran the out. They ran the wrong pattern. So making sure that if the quarterback is under duress and throws it, it doesn't always necessarily throws it to an area maybe that there's not a player there, doesn't always necessarily mean that they were intentionally grounding. Maybe they were just running and thought that was a spot or something else. So really make sure that you talk through those. Legal participation is another one. Obviously players leaving the field, making sure you're doing the counting. Even during the play, if there's a player steps out and steps back in, really make sure, were they pushed out? Did they go out on their own? There's a lot that goes on there for that. And then obviously the last one, the targeting, illegal helmet contact. Normally that's one where, especially when you're looking at ejections, confirm with the other officials. Ideally you want to have at least two of you say, yeah, that was pretty bad. However, if you're the only one that saw it and you can rest on your laurels that that's what it was, I mean, obviously that's what you want to go with. The big thing here that I highlight is positioning. The rule book is important, and obviously you need to know your rules, especially when it comes to penalties. But the other side, the other side is that look at that manual. Where are you at? A lot of our best penalties, one of our best penalties here is being in that right spot. A lot of times, especially when it comes to judgment calls, if you're in the right location and you've got a good view, good angle, and you make that call, you're not going to get questioned. But if you're throwing your flag from 40 yards away because you weren't hustling or weren't in the right spot, that's going to really make it tough to maybe justify that, or give the coach some peace of mind that you really saw what you saw. So I know we talk a lot about the rules, and obviously it's key, but don't forget about the mechanics and knowing where you need to be. Chuck, anything you want to add to any of that before we jump into?
No, great.
Any questions?
Anything, Jared, Greg?
Yeah, we have one question here. I'm going to ask if you guys have video dealing with coaches on a sideline. That might be a better time to ask the question, but if you don't, then I'll ask the question now.
I don't know if I do. I don't think I do.
Okay. Then the question is, this is from Joe Meusen of Shorewood. Are there certain automatics that you have in mind that result in automatic unsportsmanlike conduct fouls? And if so, can you describe them? A lot of times while lip reading, you can see the coaches swearing. So they're curious. Joe is curious to hear your perspective on this.
Paul, you want to go ahead, or you want me to?
Go ahead, Chuck. You probably.
I'll be honest. I'll be honest with everybody. Being on the college sideline, you hear more F-bombs and this and that towards players. We already talked about the gentleman, Coach Bo Pelini. He is notorious for throwing F-bombs. So if it's not directed towards me or one of my crewmates, I'm good with it. If he's just going to want to vent and he's all over his players, so be it. Well, that's on the athletic director and the president of the school, or the AD and the principal. High school, they're a little bit closer than college. So I've had run-ins with situations like that. Hey, coach, especially in high school, hey, coach, we can't have that language here. We just can't. This is an educational-based game, and that's our job. That is 100% our job to take care of that. And if they don't like it, well, it's 15 yards. It's just another flag. And if it gets really bad, the bus is that way. Paul, anything?
Yeah, I think, obviously, yeah, with high school coaches, I mean, with players, a lot of times, if, you hear some of that, we use the adage, hey, you got to repeat what you just said there. Frustration, but I definitely, there's certain things, if there's sometimes depending on most coaches with their language, if it's directed at players, other coaches, their frustration underneath I may kind of put on the old rabbit ears and maybe ignore it to some extent. But obviously, if it's directed, if an official uses, especially drops an F-bomb and it's directed towards myself or one of my fellow officials, that's probably going to warrant an automatic flag. And like I said, I think at the college game, it's a little more of a little more lenient on with some of that, but definitely at high school, that's not there. I would say that I've, at least in the Madison area, southern Wisconsin area, most of the coaches, their language is for the most part pretty well in check. I think they also know they're educators. A lot of them are teachers and understand what what the right things to say. But that would be definitely an automatic if I heard them say, what the F are you guys doing? Or you don't effing belong here. Well, that, because it's the undertone too of that. They're starting to question your credibility, and that's one thing that I won't tolerate out on the field.
100% behind you, Paul. 100%. Yep. Is that good, Jared?
Yeah, I think so. I'll just add that being on a sideline, we certainly see and hear everything that kind of takes place there. And the first thing that we have to do whenever we're seeing behavior that's probably unacceptable is we need to make sure that's related to us and our crew. A lot of times coaches will be swearing at their players, like Paul mentioned. They might be throwing clipboards, their headgear, whatever it is. If it's directed at their bench and it's off of the sideline, generally let them take care of business the way they see fit. If that is a personal attack against me as an official or any of my crew members, then they put me in the position of saying, can I talk this guy off of his behavior, or is it severe enough that I need to now involve myself and penalize this coach? So I'd say use that as your first step, making sure that's in reference to you or your partners on the field.
Excellent.
Yep.
Oh boy. Hopefully I don't have issues with the video, because I got some really good, a couple good clips. I'm going to keep this within the next 10 minutes. We'll be finished here, because I can go on and on with clips. Oh, come on now. Oh no. Bear with me here, everybody. I apologize. This was ready to go, and obviously Chuck likes to talk too much. I will say a couple situations that happen in games. That we had one in a level 1 playoff game for high school. Went into overtime. We actually had a targeting foul during the game, and it was a no-brainer. Coaching staff on one side went nuts. The other side was like, "Oh, that's a good play." Well, no, that's probably not good. All right, so let's get to plays here. Paul and Jared and Greg, is that big enough for everybody?
Yes, it is. Just a reminder to the audience, above this screen that's being shared are the webcams of Chuck and Paul. You can make that smaller by moving that horizontal bar there if you want to maximize the screen share.
Or you just take my ugly face off. You'll be all right. I'm all right with that. All right, so first quarter, 14-21 to go in the game. Everybody needs to be ready to officiate. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody, because watch this. I'm going to let this play out, and then I'll just discuss a few things. So I'm going to rewind here a little bit. And so everybody noticed, if you look at the top of the screen, watch the wide receiver in the slot. This guy right here. He gets taken down by this defender right here. So we have a foul. Defensive holding. No brainer whatsoever. Everybody can see it. Then we have absolutely 100% no reason for that hit. Everybody does a good job of getting in there as far as officials. I thought the linesman did a great job with his mechanics, getting the spot, keeping an eye on the players, obviously. We talked about the crew communication. We have multiple fouls on the play. We want to make sure we get the enforcement correct. We have 2 fouls on the defense. We have one official that has 1 foul. We have another official that has another foul. We need to make sure we have all the information to the referee. Then we have our line judge, and then I believe it's our center judge. He is also having a discussion because he's going to be enforcing the penalty with the football. So they do a good job of communication here. And then you'll see, I'm going to leave this go. And you see all the communication going on here. As you back up just one step here, watch John, back up one more time here. You'll see him as he's doing right there, he's pointing. He's like, okay, we have foul here for offensive holding or defensive holding. We're going to tack that on. Then you'll see his hand move again. Then we have a dead ball, personal foul, late hit out of bounds, and then we're going to tack that on. That is great nonverbal communication. Obviously, he's still talking as well. Now, I'm going to back up one little bit here. See our center judge right here? He is talking on the 020 to the other side of the field, communicating to the short wing on that side, on the opposite side of the field, of what is taking place. What are the fouls that are occurring? Outstanding job of communication from getting together to the center judge or umpire or whoever it may be, the off official, getting the information to the other side of the field. One thing I will say about multiple fouls, and I know Paul brought this up, if you as a referee have issues with multiple fouls, make sure you have 1 or 2 officials in the area if you're using the microphone to help you with the numbers so you don't mess that up. And I wasn't very good about it when I was a referee in Division III, and I asked my guys, please stay here. Please stay here. We do that at Division one level. Do it in high school. It's only going to make your crew that much better. The credibility is going to be there. Oops, sorry. You got the defensive holding call. Good mechanics by the referee. Dead ball foul, personal foul, late hit out of bounds. Good stuff. Absolutely good stuff here. Outstanding job with communication. Now I'm going to move forward here. All right. Now, umpires have to be ready to officiate all play. Every play, you never know what's going to happen. As you see in this play, you'll see there's going to be a wide receiver bubble screen from the top of the screen. Watch the interior lineman here on the defense. Watch what happens. I'll just let it play out and then we'll discuss. So at this point, when I first saw this play, I'm like, oh, we got offensive holding. Okay, sounds good. Well, if you look at the replay, now I'm going to go to the end zone view quick, and I'm going to then I'll back up. Watch what happens right in this area here with the center. Not very often do you see this. He's getting held by the defensive player. He's trying to get out on the screen pass to block downfield, and the defensive lineman or linebacker is holding him on the play, so he is not allowed to get out in the field of play. excellent job of knowing your responsibility as an umpire and reading the play correctly. And now I'm going to fast forward it here. What I want you to watch is the communication after the play is done. All right, so we have the umpire and referee discussing what he has on the play. He's got holding, and look, oh, let's back up here just a second. Look at that guy that just stepped into the screen, Mr. Blum. He's actually helping out with penalty enforcement as well. Ball was snapped on the 10-yard line. We got defensive holding. We got to tack it on. I don't think we could tack it on in high school, but we went back to the previous spot. Defensive holding went half the distance, and it's second down, and I think it was 2 or 3. So it went from 2nd and 7 to half the distance. So it went second down and 2, and replay the down. Awesome job with communication. Had all the information. I got one punt play here I want to show you, and then I want to get to the final play. Talk about scrimmage kicks real quick. I hate scrimmage kicks because you never know what's going to happen. You know something's going to happen. You got somebody that's trailing their player that they're supposed to block. You got possible block of the back coming. All of a sudden you get a reversal on a cutback, and you got a blindside block coming. You have to be aware of your surroundings at all time. And I think this official did a great job. I'll let it play out. So the umpire, actually it was the short wing that came in, but I think the umpire would have got this too. The foul that occurs right in this area here, where all the hubbub is taking place, sees the block in the back, right at about the 29-yard line. Watch the K player go flying into the sideline. 100% foul. No question about it. And I don't care who called it. Great call. Here's the question. Does he know? Was it during the kick? Does he know possibly if there was a return, during the return? It is critical that we know the status of the ball when the foul occurred. So important, because it could change the difference of 15 yards of the field to 30 yards of the field, or backing somebody up inside the 5-yard line. So it's very critical. So this communication that takes place, obviously the ball goes out of bounds, so it's touched by nobody, just a bad shank. So where it comes in, I'm going to just fast forward here a little bit because I want to get to our special play of the night. So the communication took place right here. And this conversation right here is, when did that foul occur? Guaranteed. That's what they're talking about right there. Referee comes up. He's got all the information he needs. You have block during the kick. Illegal block in the back. From the end of the kick is the enforcement spot. From the end of the kick because it happened during the kick, end of the kick. Okay. Excellent job by this crew with communication with this scrimmage kick situations. And finally, I'm going to end with this play. Give me a second to get here. I'm going to do this. Bear with me here a minute. It took place a couple years ago. Minnesota and Michigan at Minnesota. It is, and I'm going to use this scenario, and I talked to Paul about this. This is a state championship game. 32 seconds left. 2nd and 6. Team is driving to possibly tie the game or even take the lead in the game. Watch the play. What would you do? What's your communication? Oops, sorry. Clock's running. Now, taking consideration, we're not going to have the side judge there or field judge. It'll be the back judge responsibility for that touchdown call, or lucky enough, maybe one of our wings. Okay? So right now, we have a touchdown on the board. At the state tournament, in the finals, you have now replay official that will rule yes or no to the touchdown call on the field. If it's yes, they'll confirm it. If it's no, they will reset where it needs to be reset. Okay, so if we continue on with the action here, I'm going to fast forward it here. Coach Harbaugh, he's like, we're screwed. They're going to beat us. The other coaches, he was the interim at the time. Okay, now the replay official just buzzed the crew and said the previous play is under review. So we're going down. Replay is looking at the play. And we're going here a little bit. I'm going to go fast here. All right, so let's back up a little bit. Everybody sees his knee down right there. As we look at tape, as the replay guy, he's looking at this. Okay, now he's going to get the angle and make sure he knows where the ball is going to be. So we're looking at probably roughly the half-yard line with his knee down after the catch. So we fast forward here. You'll see it here. Boom. Knees down. Easy. Now just put the pieces, the replay can put the pieces together. They will do that for you and get you the information that we have going forward. So we fast forward here as all this communication is being taken place between the referee and the replay on the headset like we are here. And we usually have one gentleman that takes notes for the referee, so make sure he can repeat the information properly to the crowd with the microphone, because you will have a microphone at the state tournament. So he is getting that information from the replay people. He is going to relay it to them. So we have one timeout for Michigan, or Minnesota. We got 3 timeouts for Michigan, and Minnesota thinks the clock's going to start on the ready. Okay. So we fast forwarded here, and Mr. Don Caper makes the announcement after review. Play has been reversed. Ball will be put at the half-yard line. It'll be first down and goal. And he forgets to give one important information that I feel, I'm surprised he didn't say it, is that the clock will start on his whistle, on the ready for play, because nobody took time out, and it was a first down. So we fast forward it. So he gets all this information. I'm not sure if his crew told the coaches or the players. If I know Dan well enough, and I think Greg would agree with this, that he would have told the quarterback and the coach, everybody would have told the coaches of the situation. Fast forward to the very next play. 14 seconds on the game clock. And I'm just going to slowly move this forward. Clock is running. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner. Clock is still running. I hope everybody knows that the clock is running. Everybody knows the clock is running. Still running. I'm just going to play it out here. So I'm going to rewind something real quick. Underneath, I don't know if everybody can see my arrow here, but underneath the running tally of the scores, see Coach Harbaugh running down the sideline. The snap has already taken place. I would certainly hope our wings on the sideline would not be looking at him. It is more important to be looking at the line of scrimmage because of the snap is so imminent at this time. Back judge, you might be able to help out, but if you're seeing him run down, you see the balls being snapped, you're not calling timeout either. Unbelievable situation in this game. With that being said, I'm going to leave it at this. Hang on one second. Officials, make sure you communicate. I can't tell you how important it is in that situation. State tournament, last 30 seconds of the game. You make the great call. You don't make the great call, you could move up the ladder. Everybody sees it on TV. Do your job. Do your part. If you've done it, it's in their hands. I can't say this enough. It's in their hands. Do your job. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Paul, anything to add before we finish up?
Not at all. Just thanks to everyone for their time and participation and joining this meeting tonight. Appreciate it.
Jared, I have one more last thing. I know, Paul, you had a picture of one of my favorite officials. He is now retired referee, Ed Hockley's. I do have a bobblehead, if everybody can see that, of Ed Hockley's. He was my guy that I used to love to watch. Then it used to be Frank's territory, and now I'm having a hard time with trying to figure out who I might have to take a look at. But I'll tell you what, Greg Blum might be my next guy I look at.
Very nice.
I really appreciate everybody with your time and effort. Stay healthy. Wear your mask if you have to. But just remember, you can always study and get better.
All right. Thank you very much, Chuck and Paul. If you have a few minutes, I think we have a couple questions yet. Can you guys see my screen first off?
No.
No. Okay. Hang on.
At least I can't anyway.
I can't either.
Okay. Let's try that.
That was there you go. Perfect.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to set this one up for you guys. I think I'll take a crack at it too, but a lot of our officials on this line are newer officials and are working sub-varsity games. And we talk about the importance of getting game film to watch yourself, to learn what you're doing, take notes. How would you guys go about getting game film for freshman JV games? Or even for those officials who work varsity, and sometimes that's a struggle to try to get game film for varsity games even.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, our crew, usually what we do is when we send out our email, this is for varsity contest, we'll send out an email to the AD, when we're going to arrive, all that kind of stuff. But in there, we also say that, if there's somebody you can put us in touch with that has game film that we can get a copy of, we'd love to do that. We usually follow that up the following week with either an email to the AD or to maybe the head coach or one of the coaches to see what if they can give us the game film. A lot of it nowadays has gone to Huddle, the online information, and I think we're finding even in the sub-varsity games, the JV and freshmen, that they're using that technology as well. So what I would recommend, especially for newer officials, when you get there, at some point, usually onto the home side, is try to find the head coach or one of the coaches and just ask, hey, are you videoing this game? Can I get your email address? Write it down on your game card, and you maybe contact them after and say, I'd love to be able to take a look at it. I think, I've never had especially if you let them know, we're using it to evaluate our progress, how we can do better as officials, how we can learn. I've never had a coach say, no, I'm not going to share that with you because I don't want you to get better. I mean, they're usually extremely willing to do that. So it's really just kind of finding, talking to the coaches or talking to someone on the management staff and getting someone to contact. I think usually, if you wait a day or two to let them, sometimes they have to download it or do some things, slice it up. But that's probably your best effort. Back in the day, we had to bring DVDs. I even had to bring VHS tapes at one point to games to do that. Yeah, I know. I'm dating myself. Right. But but yeah, I think that's really the best way to get it. There's and in some cases you won't have that option. It is challenging, but I think you really just work with the coaches, and like I said, they're more than willing to share that, especially if they know how seriously we take it, and they actually really appreciate that, knowing that you're taking it that seriously and wanting to get better. That's a good tone for the game.
Absolutely. I 100% agree, Paul, with everything you just said.
Yep.
Anything else, Jared?
Yes, you know what? I in regards to that, I would just say don't be afraid to ask. Sometimes you might need to follow up more than once. We need to be respectful of their time. And if a coach, I've gone to athletic directors sometimes too because I don't want to bother a coach during game week. The athletic director might be able to send them an email or even walk down to their office and ask them to do something. So just don't be afraid to ask questions. You might not get game film 100% of the time, but you're probably going to get game film more often than not, as long as you're respectful about the way you go about it.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
I just find Mondays seem to be the best day because it's kind of the last game. They're kind of done with the last game and they're kind of just starting to get prepared for upcoming week game. And that sometimes seems to be a good time. I've had my most success there. Yeah, if you wait till like the Thursday or Friday before the next game and say, hey, I need game film, coaches are already moved on. So kind of have to play that by ear. But yeah, just be respectful. But sometimes it takes a couple follow-ups too.
All right. And this last one isn't a question, but it's going to be a statement that I'm going to make, and you guys can piggyback off of it if you want or not. But I played college football a little bit, and so I have a lot of former teammates who are now high school coaches throughout the state of Wisconsin and other areas. And when I ask them about their interactions with officials, I'm always really curious because I'm obviously in the officiating business and they're in the coaching business. And the majority of the time when they have some criticism about a crew, or something negative about that crew, it has nothing to do with what takes place between the sidelines. It's everything outside the sidelines. It's how they communicate with their coaches, their body language, or their lack of communication. Sometimes officials will use the wrong tone and come off really defensive. And I understand that it's easy for us to be defensive because this is often a one-way street where they can harass us a certain way, but we're expected to react a different way to them. But I don't want to underestimate how much communication and some of our softer skills matter to these coaches and to these sidelines. And that's my statement.
I really don't have much to add to that, Jerry, because I tell you what, you've hit it right on the head. It's we again, like I talked about, we have to be the calmer effect in this whole situation. Coaches have a lot on the line. The players have a lot on the line. We have to be the calming effect in the entire game, no matter if it's 50-0 or if it's an ass whooper of a 3-0 game, and every play matters. We have to be the calling effect. We have to be able to communicate and take care of our business.
Yep. Just don't take anything for granted. The coach might not remember the holding call that you made in the second quarter, but he probably will remember the time you used the wrong tone with him in the second half.
Yep, that's a fair statement.
Okay. All right, we're on our last slide. Our winner tonight of our weekly giveaway that we have here is Ural Jackson of Racine. Congratulations, Ural. I'll be mailing these out tomorrow morning. Our next session is Tuesday. We're doing Officiating 101, Part 2. So as I mentioned, we're going to be covering questions from the audience, but we're also going to be covering beanbag usage, flag usage, free kicks, scrimmage kicks, and goal line plays. That's a lot of information, so we're going to try to be brief, but I think by the end of the night, we're for sure going to get the goal line plays right. All right, and those are some of the most important ones.
Absolutely.
If anybody else has anything to add, Paul or Chuck, I thank you guys very much for your time. Great presentation. I appreciate it.
You bet. Anytime.
All right. Any suggestions, feedbacks, comments, please email swafb@gmail.com. Thank you, everybody.